This is TCM. I'm Alicia Malone, and I'm joined tonight by Scott McGee, who is our Senior Director of Original Programming here at TCM and the author of the brand new TCM book, Danger on the Silver Screen. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Alicia.
So now we get into car chases, and
Yes.
car chases specifically of the late 60s and the 70s that became most well-known, I would say, after Bullitt.
Yeah, car chases became a real thing, even a little bit earlier than that in the late 50s. But as cars got faster and as they became more emblematic of a character's, a character trait of the lead actor in the film, chases became more prevalent. Mm-hmm. And this was also concurrent with the slow demise of the Western. As Westerns, feature film Westerns started to die out, stuntmen and stunt women who specialized in horseback stunting in Westerns had to change because they were getting less work. Now, it wasn't completely dying out, the Western, but there became a need to specialize in something a little different for, what you could consider modern day Westerns, the action film. So you have films like Bullitt, which was devised as sort of a modern day Western with the lead character, Frank Bullitt, played by Steve McQueen. And then you get into films like The French Connection, mm-hmm. where the car chase becomes a thing that would make special mention in a lot of critical reviews of the film. They would say, the car chase in the middle of the film, it's worth the price of admission alone. And so when you have a producer like Phil D'Antoni, who produced Bullitt and The French Connection, he became sort of known as the producer with the car chases. So there was always an opportunity for filmmakers to top themselves with more and more elaborate car chases, and it still goes on today.
Yeah, you mentioned Philip D'Antoni. So he produced Bullitt and The French Connection, and then he produced and directed the 7-Ups, which we're about to watch. And of course, he had to include an incredible car chase in the middle of it.
That's right. He did so by working with the same stunt driver, one of the main actors in both Bullitt and also in The French Connection, a man named Bill Hickman. Bill Hickman was notable for being probably one of the greatest stunt drivers in motion picture history. And he was also an actor. He appeared in films like The Wild One, Jailhouse Rock, Patton, and a slew of other films. But with the 7-Ups, he was given an opportunity to create a car chase that somewhat topped even the one in Bullitt and also in The French Connection. So with the 7-Ups, they wanted to shoot it again in Manhattan, all along the Upper West Side, and they wanted to shoot one car driven by Bill Hickman being chased by Roy Scheider, doubled in this film by a stuntman named Jerry Summers. What makes the 7-Ups car chase so notable is the violence and the grittiness of what they had begun with The French Connection. But with this, they create an even longer, more elaborate car chase.
Yeah, I think it goes for 10 minutes, and there's children that have to run out of the way.
That's right. They shot this much the same way as William Friedkin did with The French Connection, almost a guerrilla-style type of filmmaking, where they made the authorities aware that they were shooting a car chase between, two Pontiacs. But the police, or the authorities, I should say, in New York, they weren't fully aware of just how fast they were going to be going. And they're reaching speeds of 80 to 90 miles an hour all along 10th Avenue. Mm. And, these cars are not able to stop on a dime. So if anything jumped in the way unexpectedly, there was real danger involved. Very, very real danger.
Well, we'll talk more about the car chase after we watch the film, but here it is from 1973, the 7-Ups. That was the 7-Ups, and I'm back with Scott McGee. Scott, that car chase, let's talk about that ending.
Yeah, so the ending was devised by Bill Hickman as a nod, or I don't know if I would call it a salute, but it was in reference to the way Jane Mansfield died. Mm. She plowed underneath a truck just like the car does in the 7-Ups and killed her. And in fact, after that, trucks started to be manufactured with what was often called the Mansfield bar, which would disallow cars from crashing under a truck like that.
Oof, but it was such a dangerous stunt to pull off. So you needed someone as skilled as Jerry Summers. And in the other car, you've got Bill Hickman. And you were mentioning to me, and it's also written in your book, that Bill's also involved in a real-life car chase.
Yeah, it turns out that he was driving along on Ventura Boulevard along with another stuntman named Alex Sharp. And they realize that there's a car chase coming up behind them. So they pull over, and the lead car is actually a bank robber. And the bank robber pulls his car over and starts shooting at a police officer who is chasing after the bank robbery suspect. The cop gets shot. And then the perpetrator gets back in his car and speeds off. Well, Bill Hickman decides to chase after him and to keep up, just to keep a bead on where he goes. Now, it wasn't a long chase. It was probably a couple of blocks, but it was long enough for Bill Hickman to get the notice or the attention of another cop car to say, that guy just shot a cop.
Wow.
And so the bank robber was eventually cornered and shot dead. But Hickman and his other stuntman, they made the papers. So I thought it was a neat, little tidbit on the master of the car chase being involved in a real one himself.
Well, another neat little tidbit that I have to make mention of are your socks. Very familiar face on those socks.
Yes, there was an individual named Sean Cameron who directed Robert Osborne and Ben and yourself for many years. He's since left the company, but he sent me as a gag gift these socks. I don't think in all his years ever being here, he ever appeared on TCM. He was always behind the scenes. So I wanted to finally get him on camera. This is for you, Sean.
Take a look, and I like that you can distort his face as to how high you pull them
Yes.
or when you push them down.
Yes, I could scrunch his face.
Well, it must be so fun for you to get to talk about this book finally. And your book doesn't only focus on classic films, but also modern films as well. And modern films like Baby Driver, that is an evolution of the kind of car chase scenes that we saw in The French Connection, Bullet, and the 7-Ups.
Absolutely. There's a through line, and I try to make that case throughout the book where I would have, at the end of each chapter, I would have a sidebar, which would be somehow connected to the overall main chapter. And so for things like Baby Driver, the sidebar that I have in the book, I call it Old Man Driver, Baby Driver, Old Man Driver. And I make mention of another favorite figure of mine, a guy named Kerry Lofton, who was another major stunt coordinator and a stunt driver in tons of films. And I mention a lot of him in the book. But I talk about one of his last stunts in a 1984 film called Against All Odds, where he drives a Ferrari down Sunset Boulevard. And the man is, in his late 70s doing this. So, yeah, I try to make connections between the newer films and the older films and, where then meets now.
It's been such a pleasure to talk with you about your book, Scott McGee. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
But don't go anywhere, because after the break, Scott will be telling me all about the famous chariot race scene in the 1959 version of Ben-Hur.